The lottery proved to be a lucky one for the Orlando Magic as they landed the #1 pick of the NBA draft. Their center of attention will be Shaquille O'Neal of LSU. Not since Patrick Ewing in 1985 has a player with such physical talent emerged from the college scene. The Shaq has been labeled the next franchise player, and with the credentials he brings to the NBA, many feel that he could become the dominating force of the 90s.
For the first time ever outside of New York City, we're about ready to get underway. We're in the Portland Memorial Coliseum where about 7,000 fans will be here for the next 3.5 hours. Let's get things started. The welcome to the 1992 draft from Commissioner David Stern.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 1992 NBA Draft. To the NBA fans here at the Portland Memorial Coliseum, home of the Western Conference champion Trailblazers, and to the city of Portland, thanks for having us. To those gathered at our team draft headquarters across the country, and to our national audiences on TNT and NBA radio, thanks for being with us. All of the NBA team representatives have been briefed on the draft procedures, so let's get started. And as you know, the first selection in the 1992 NBA draft will be made by the Orlando Magic, who have 5 minutes to make that selection.
David Stern with the welcome to the 1992 draft, and now 5 minutes from now Orlando almost certainly will pick Shaquille O'Neal. But not only do these teams select the players, they have to sign them. And in addition to the fact that they get multi-million-dollar contracts, the NBA is also a league with a salary cap. To talk about the financial structure of this, Craig Sager is with legal counsel to the NBA, Gary Bettman. Craig?
Well, thank you very much, Bob. Obviously, the grand prize in this draft is Shaquille O'Neal. Those rights do belong to the Orlando Magic with the #1 pick. Understanding the salary cap is one thing, balancing the federal budget another, but the salary cap may be even more difficult. The man who knows more about than anybody else, Gary Bettman. And Gary, what does Orlando have to do to sign Shaquille O'Neal?
Orlando's going to have to get under the salary cap by an amount that will enable them and Shaquille to make a deal. Hopefully it won't take as much as everyone thinks.
What are their options? What is the flexibility? How do they do it?
Well, they've been working very hard on it, and that process has begun already. They're going to restructure some contracts for existing players. They're going to choose not to re-sign some of their free agents, and they may have to make a trade or two or let a player go through waivers. But they're looking at all their options, and they're going to try and make enough room to make Shaq happy.
Okay, well, obviously drafting Shaquille O'Neal is one thing, signing him another matter. Back to you, Bob.
Thanks, Craig Sager. Doug and Hubie, we talked before in the arena of professional sports today, not just the NBA. The fact of getting a Shaquille O'Neal is only a small part of the puzzle. And Hubie, we were talking earlier about the difficulty in arranging the money to sign these players.
Well, you know, you look at the hockey problem with Lindros. Here's a guy who sat out an entire year, turned down $50 million, and now they're in arbitration. Now, right now, Shaquille O'Neal has signed $2.5 million for Reebok and another $2 million in trading cards. He's sitting on $4.5 million. So he might not be in a hurry to sign a contract for Orlando. I think he could survive the next year sitting out.
I think also a real consideration here is Stanley Roberts is a restricted free agent. If someone comes in and gives him an offer sheet July 1st, that gives Orlando 15 days to match. If they can't decide on Shaquille's contract by July 16th, then they have to make a decision on do they keep Stanley Roberts or do they let him go to keep the money for Shaquille. Could be a problem.
And, of course, if you follow this, and this gets very detailed, but it does have to do with what players will play for what teams. You can go over the cap when you sign a free agent. You can't go over the cap signing the draft choice. So, therefore, the Stanley Roberts and the Shaquille O'Neal, both former teammates from LSU situation, will be very interesting and complicated for Orlando. Now let's just take a quick look here at the top 5 picks in the draft, the teams that will be selecting the first 5 players. Orlando almost certainly to go with Shaquille O'Neal. Charlotte they think will go with Mourning. Minnesota, Leitner. Dallas, Jimmy Jackson. But then comes Denver, and we're not sure about the first 4, but most people feel certain about it. Then Denver, and what Denver does could throw this draft and from 5 through 27 into some kind of turmoil.
Well, a lot of maneuvering on Bernie Bickerstaff's part that he might try to trade down at 5. The word is that he likes LaFonso Ellis at that pick at 5. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But they were maneuvering to try to make some moves, but it looks like they've held firm where they're at.
All right, let's take a look at the guidelines now, or just at least talk about them a bit here so you understand what happens. And since it's been a year since we had the draft, in the first round, each team will have 5 minutes to make the selection. We have 1:31 remaining for Orlando to make their official selection, and we'll get to that in just a moment. In the second round, 2 minutes between. Only 2 rounds in the NBA. And let's go now to David Stern for the first selection of 1992.
With the first pick in the 1992 NBA draft, the Orlando Magic selects Shaquille O'Neal from Louisiana State University.
O'Neal, as he said, "What, me, the first pick?" He walks into the arena, 8,000 fans in here cheering the first selection. In 1985 was the first lottery. Patrick Ewing went into the Knicks. You're looking at the family of Shaquille O'Neal, welcoming him to elite status among professional athletes around the world. 7'1", 300 pounds, only 20 years old.
Well, big smiles right now in Orlando, to say the least. Shaquille O'Neal is a force inside, offensively, defensively. I'd have to say right now his offense might be slightly behind his defense because he's so raw. He played against so many zone defenses, guys standing in front and behind him. You see his shot blocking ability. He runs the floor. He has great enthusiasm for a big man also, which I think is very, very important. He appears to be a guy who really loves to play basketball.
So he's charismatic, Bob, and he wants to be coached. The big factor here is going to be the attitude. Will it remain the same? The enthusiasm will be there because if everyone is healthy at Orlando, they really have an awful lot of good, young, talented players to surround him.
Well, let's meet Shaquille O'Neal for the first time as a professional basketball player. He's with Craig Sager.
And your first thing was, who, me, number 1? Obviously, drafting you number 1 is a foregone conclusion, but what are the prospects of you signing early or the prospects of you sitting out a year?
Well, patience is the best virtue, and we're going to Orlando tomorrow, and we're going to start the negotiations, and we're just going to take our time. And, as I said before, patience is the best virtue, and we're just going to take our time.
You've been working with a lot of big-name players. What legends of the game have you worked with to improve your game?
Well, I work with Magic Johnson, and, he didn't really tell me much. He said, Shaq, you're a pretty good player. You just need to work on the arch on your shot, and you'll be all right.
One selection that bypassed you was the U.S. Olympic team. How disappointing is it for you not to be a part of that team?
I was disappointed at first. However, Christian Leitner, he is a great player, and I just want to wish Coach Daly and all those guys good luck.
You've already set a record by flying 50 family members and friends here to join you at the draft. Are you going to take them all to Disney World with you and go to Orlando tomorrow?
Yes, I am, and I would like to say hi to Grandma Irma Harrison. I love you.
Okay, they're waiting for you back there in the Love Shack. Congratulations, Bob.